time, and it is so great to hear from Earth again.
Is so cool. History was made this week as NASA's Artemis II, the first crewed lunar mission in more than a half a century, completed its historic trip around the moon on Monday afternoon. And while this is a historic step in future space missions, it also is bringing to light new questions, especially on the lasting impact this may have on the crew's health. So joining me now with a very different look at this week's Artemis II trip is Dr. Ming Wu. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We're so excited to learn more because you can only imagine what these astronauts are going through, right? All types of intense training, and then what happens to the body while you're in space. So what are the biggest risks that the astronauts face?
So in terms of biggest risks, our bodies grew up and developed in gravity. So of course, with the lack of gravity, there are a lot of changes that occur in the human body. Bones can become more brittle because we don't lay down as much bone. Bone is always growing, and if you don't have gravity, it kind of doesn't grow right.
Wow.
Yeah, same thing with muscles. You're using different muscles, using different, different ways to move, and so things change quite a bit.
And considering that this was a matter of days, unlike maybe a longer mission, what do you think happened to their body in space for that limited amount of time?
Sure. The biggest thing is probably the change in fluid balance. And so our bodies, because of gravity, normally our bodies are designed to fight the force of gravity and push fluid back up to the top part. So they probably had a lot of swelling in their upper bodies when they first got to space. That normalizes after a few days, but when they get back to Earth, of course, everything shifts again, and so that can cause a couple, nausea, can cause a couple of things as all the water shifts around.
Right, and it makes sense. We don't typically think about those things, but it is all part of it. Before we get to mitigating all of that here on Earth, what about like when you're in deep space, when they were circling around the moon? Would that impact any additional ailments in the body?
Not so much that. The biggest thing, when you're in deep space, of course, is radiation. And so, there's a lot of things that they do on the spacecraft to mitigate radiation, to make sure that they're protected from that. So really in deep space, the biggest thing is, of course, communication, the distance from Earth itself. But gravity at that point is non-existent, and so there's not much change there.
Okay, that's interesting. So they're back on Earth. What would happen, or when they're back on Earth, what will they do? Like, what will their doctors tell them to do to try to normalize and acclimate to Earth?
For the first few days, it's probably just, light exercise. Their muscles probably have atrophied a little bit. Not very much. Like you said, it was a pretty short mission, but, they're wanting to get used to gravity again, used to, how the body moves. The muscles may have deteriorated slightly, and so physical therapy, making sure they're staying hydrated, all of the normal things we have people do, even after, being inactive for a few days, just to make sure that they're kind of getting back up to what they need to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about long-term health effects? Are there any long-term health effects if you do some of these space missions that they should be aware of?
Yes, for sure. Like I said, the bones can become more brittle. The other thing is you'll have to make sure that you're doing the exercises you need to keep your body, strong. Especially with the lack of gravity, you use different muscles in space. One of the big things that people don't realize is that, we normally build calluses on the bottom of our feet.
Right.
But when you're in the space station, you're actually using the top of your feet to hold yourself in place. So you end up getting calluses on the top of your feet rather than the bottom.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of surprising things that I learned from you today. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Doctor.
Of course. Thank you.